Martin Adams had a really interesting question on Twitter yesterday, which was, when it comes to note-taking, is it more important to be able to easily capture information, or is it more important to easily recall information? And my answer was that it needs to be both, because if you have too much friction to capture information, you're going to abandon the system. But then on the other side of the coin, if recall isn't easy, then you're going to abandon it because it will eventually become a hot mess that you can't search and do anything with. And that latter part is where I've really struggled with my different Obsidian vaults. I probably had 4 or 5, maybe 6 different vaults at this point, as I've fumbled my way through trying to figure out Zettelkasten and Smart Notes and then adapt that to meet my own needs. But ultimately, each of them ended in failure because there was too much friction in the system, and the effort required to maintain the knowledge base and the hierarchy of knowledge didn't yield the results and insights that I found useful enough to continue investing my time and energy in. And so that led me to kind of abandon the whole knowledge base system for a little while and focus on the other part, which is the reference system. So the reference system is really, or otherwise called the commonplace note, or commonplace, and some of my other videos, is where I store my reference information, which is the literature notes from the content that I'm consuming. So whether that be a video course or a book, all of them are stored in a reference. And the benefit there is that it slows me down enough to really understand the material that I'm learning from, but then I get a nice artifact that I can capitalize on at the end, which is my distillation of the knowledge. And so when I need to refresh a refresher on those books, I can go back to my reference system. And if I need to pull source information, I can go back to my reference system and do that. The limitation with the reference system, however, is that the knowledge isn't integrated. So for example, I'm learning about Go, the programming language Go, also called Golang, and several books have talked about interfaces, and it's a very difficult concept for me to grok, and I don't have a way to look at all of my knowledge or all of the information that I've gathered on interfaces across my resources. I can only look at them in the narrow lens of the material that I learned them from. And so I stumbled upon a way in Logseq to create a dynamic hierarchy through tagging that I'm about to show you, and I think it solves the problem that I've had in Obsidian, where having to maintain or garden that knowledge is no longer really necessary because the tags allow me to search for particular things while also dynamically generating the hierarchy that I can navigate in. And so that's what I'm going to show you in this video, is how I've started to build out my dynamic hierarchy with tags inside of Logseq. So here we are in Logseq, and I am currently looking at what I would call a literature note that would be in my reference system. Now, my reference system in Logseq doesn't have an official folder. They're all just kind of at the flat level, and I use tags to navigate to them. So if I wanted to find this note and I didn't remember the name, that is the purpose of these tags here: course, programming, software development. So if I looked for course, I could see here all the notes that I have take course. There's the web development, so I could click on that. So that's what I mean by it's a reference system. So I'm using these tags as a way to find my way back to knowledge. But inside this note are all of my other notes related that I had taken from this course. So everything in here are notes taken directly from this course as I was watching. And I'll show you how I'm using the tags in here to create a dynamic hierarchy. So if we look at the first note, for example, this performant parsing with the func init. So the init function is a function that runs first before the main function in Go, and this is an efficient or performant parsing because it's using parse globs, and so that was a snippet that I wanted to remember because I knew I would reuse that, and it's a key concept that I took away from the video. And so when I was taking the video, I really didn't have this tag here. I just took my notes as normal, where I was watching the course, capturing what was interesting, and then writing the syntax in here. And one of the reasons why I love Logseq and Obsidian for technical people is the markdown and then the syntax highlighting of markdown. But after I've taken the literature note, I want to be able to find this knowledge across different systems. I want to be able to search for this knowledge. I don't want to have to remember that web development with Google's Go programming language and then it's in section 2 templates. I want to be able to search for it. And that's where the tags come into play. So if I put this back, how I'd want to find my way back to this knowledge is it's going to be Golang related. So that's the top level tag, which you can see here. So it's Golang. Now, Logseq allows you to do something similar to Obsidian with the kind of the sub keywords or sub tags with the slash. So now I'm saying, okay, I would definitely go search for, my keywords would be to find this knowledge would be Golang. Of course, it's a Golang programming language, but this is related to templates. And I got that from the section name. Section name is templates. And there's this. Now, the other keyword that I might search for independently of this would be init, which should probably be Golang init. So Golang init. So these are the two kind of keywords that I would find my way back to this knowledge. Some notes might have just one, some might have two, like in this case. But either way, these are how I would search for the knowledge. It would either be Golang template or Golang init. That's how I would remember this particular note. So how does that look though? So I've added these tags, but how does that look from a hierarchy perspective, and how would I search? Well, the number one thing is I could just go do Golang and /template, and I could pull up that. So those tags actually create dynamically generated pages. So if I do that, I can see that I have a number of link references here, and that I actually have this one right here. So performant parsing with func init is right here, Golang template, Golang init, and then there's my note. I can also filter these because there's a lot in here. So maybe I don't want to worry about the init one, I want to do nested, and so that's where you see that here. But how does this help create a dynamic hierarchy? So if we go to Golang, the page itself at the top level, you'll see that each of those slashes is represented here in this hierarchy down here. So this note is just, it's a page inside Logseq called Golang, and I've got some number of resources in here, and here are the books that I've read and not read that are related to Golang. But down here, all of this is dynamically generated. So if I wanted to find my way back to Golang templates, I could click this, and I could find all of the sub-hierarchy there. So now that I'm in templates, I can see everything that's underneath of it, and then I can go into functions, and I can see all my notes on template functions, and then I can navigate back to Golang, and then I can see all of my hierarchy notes. What's really useful about this view is it allows you to see where your knowledge is built up. So from the hierarchy perspective, I've built up a lot of knowledge around templates. So maybe that's something that I could turn into a video. I've actually started a GitHub repository where I'm kind of extracting a lot of this knowledge and putting it out into the public so my notes don't collect dust. But that's essentially how you create the dynamic hierarchy inside of Logseq, is through those slashes. And just to give you, to show you that again, if we go back to the web development and go, you can see here that I can do both tags, and I'm experimenting with what I like more. So you notice on this one, the performant parsing, I added it as a tag at the end, so it draws more attention. The first thing I see is the kind of the body of the note. And then here I've actually created the tag above it, so I could kind of filter by the keyword first. Now Logseq does something pretty cool where you can use links, which is these double square brackets that you can see here, or you can use the hashtag as a tag, but they link to the same place. So if I click Golang template, I get to there. If I click Golang template up here as the hashtag, I get taken to the same place. It's more of a visual effect of what one you like. I'm kind of settling on this because it's a little bit easier to read. It's less confusing to the eye. So for this, I would probably move this down to parsing data into template, and I would say Golang template. And then that would give me a little bit of a cleaner look. What's really cool about the block-based tags for this, for the notes, so instead of creating a page per note, I think that would be obnoxious if each one of these bullets was a page. I can start to embed and link subnotes underneath of that. And one interesting example of that is when you start to ask yourself questions, which I think I have in a different note. So if we go to Go in Action, which is a book that I just finished reading, and if we go under interfaces, here's this note that I have. So the type receiver used for a method determines if it accepts an input by value or pointer. If you don't know what that means, don't worry, I barely do. But anyway, I have these tags in here, Go interfaces and Go method receivers, that add it to my hierarchy so I can find and search. But if you look down here, I've got a code snippet and I've got some comments, and as I was writing this, I had a question. What if another method for an admin used a value receiver? Would that work? So essentially, I took this note and I took it a step further to say, what if I did this one little thing? Does it work? And then I answer my question and I add another note down here, but it's all logged in this block level indentation. So now whenever I search this, I'll be reminded of the question I had, and then this becomes a note that I could actually block reference or link later or search to. So I could actually add a tag here if I wanted to create another note, but it's not lost any context because it's underneath the bullet of the question that it came from, instead of having different linked notes and individual. When you zoom into one note, like if I were to do this, if I were to zoom into this note and minimize this to kind of simulate what it would be like if these were all separate notes, I lose the context and I only have the hyperlinks. And so it's nice to use the bullets as the narrative for your future notes. And again, all of my notes are at the block level. And what I mean by that is this bullet here is a block. And if I right click here and copy block reference, I will get a link to directly this thing and not necessarily the node itself, which would be go in action. So that kind of summarizes it. Again, if we go back to Golang, we'll just take a quick look. Here's how the hierarchy works. So you create your top level tag, which is a string of keywords now, that then create your hierarchy for you instead of having to do it yourself and manage this. A good example, another good point of this, or another good benefit, is if I wanted to change any of these, I just go into the notes and update the tag and my hierarchy changes. I don't need to move files around on a disk or anything like that. So I foresee a plugin that would be very useful for Logseq, which would be Tag Wrangler, which is an Obsidian plugin that allows you to take one tag and rename it to another one. I think with this system, that type of a plugin would be very useful. I don't know enough TypeScript yet to be able to write that, but when I do, I will definitely add that to my top of my list of plugins to develop. But at any rate, I hope you found this was useful. Thank you for watching, and please let me know if you have any questions in the comments.